Alright, hey everybody and welcome back to another Wargame Quickie. This time it's actually two topics. For one, every now and then I get asked why I turn off the MG or the third weapon on my infantry, and second topic is the importance of line infantry, especially if they're 10 points, and their 5-point transports, most importantly when they're good, which means they have more than one front armor and they have a 50 cal MG, meaning an MG with 0.75 HE power, like the M2 Browning for blue 4. I think that's the only 50 cal that you'll find on the 5-pointers. And on red 4 there's the NSVT, I believe, and there might also be the DSHK on some, but I'm not 100% certain. But most notably those are the M113A3, the K200 for South Korea, the Zelda for Israel, the M113G for Denmark, the one of the ZSDs for China, the SPW, the BTR 50 for Red 4, etc. And the MX13. But, just check if the 5-pointer has, more than one front armor and more than 5.5 HE power on the MG. The why that is important is one front armor gets one shot by 10 AP, no matter whether it's heat or kinetic. Two front armor needs 16 AP heat and 20 AP kinetic, meaning that they are significantly more durable against basically any kind of weapon. Of course, a super heavy will one-shot them no matter what, but yeah. And of course, a better MG, a stronger MG means they will deal more damage. But often also people say, well, these kind of MGs, they're useless, they instantly die. That is not really the case. You just can't send them, or shouldn't send them always, just into their death. And before we go into the replay, why turn off the third weapon? For one, obviously, especially on recon infantry, you want to turn them off so they don't show themselves. They don't shoot at other infantry or unarmored targets at their max range. And usually they only get spotted when the enemy is in their anti-tank or primary weapon range. Sometimes you want to turn off all the guns, especially on sniper squad, because then the enemy has to get really close. But most of the time, especially on recon infantry, you want to turn them off just simply so they don't give away their position. That makes sense. Sometimes, however, you may also see me turn off the MG when I'm attacking in forests or something, or when I'm assaulting a town or a forest from the open field. In that scenario, I just don't want my infantry squad to stop out in the open and shoot with their MG at enemy infantry that is in cover in forests or towns, right? Then I only want them to stop if there's a vehicle shooting at them and they are in range with their anti-tank weapon. That also makes sense. But there's another scenario, like I said, if I turn it off in forests, while I'm in forest, not when I'm attacking a forest. In this scenario, it is because infantry can't use their second and third weapon at the same time. For most infantry, that's an anti-tank weapon and an MG. There are some exceptions, but most infantry have this type of selection of weapons. And this goes hand in hand with why 5-pointers can be so important and strong. And you'll see an example here. Fallschirmjäger 90, especially on elite and not just veteran, against 2 squads of riflemen plus their 2 5-pointers. Fallschirmjäger 90 probably, except for stuff like Spetsnaz or Legion 90, I believe they have the highest DPS output of any infantry in the game. So, as expected, they should be, able to easily deal with those 2 basic rifleman squads, right? So I just attack move my Fallschirmjäger, and my opponent attack move his rifleman with the M113s behind, also on attack move. So let's see what happens. No micro here, by the way. Fallschirmjäger 90, they engage the rifleman, and soon after the M113A3s come behind and also engage the Fallschirmjäger. But the Fallschirmjäger, not being able to use the Panzerfaust 3 and the MG at the same time, being unmicroed, keep shooting at the rifleman while getting completely destroyed and stunned by the M113s, I wasn't even able to finish off the 9 HP rifleman squad. So this is why these 5-pointers, they can be very important. They can be very strong and even crucial. And massively help DPS output, while also being able, to be used as bullet sponges and meat shields. But of course, you can also do something against it, and that's where turning off the MG comes into play. What I didn't mention, but should mention, this is obviously I guess you could call it proof of concept type of scenario. It's rare that this exactly type of scenario happens, but this should give you an idea of why I sometimes do that and what's the reason behind that, you know. Yeah, but let's first get into the second scenario. This time I turn off the MG, and again, I know that I'm up against 2 rifleman squads. You know, you don't always have this information, but again, this is more to show the concept. So I'm only engaging with the primary weapon at the moment. But now the M113 comes into play, and you can see immediately my Fallschirmjäger 90 aiming with the Panzerfaust 3 to shoot the M113, right? So I do that, kill the M113, and that also leads to the rifleman being panicked, and the other M113 being shaken. My Fallschirmjäger 90 are already worried by the infantry, but the enemy is panicked or shaken respectively. I shoot the second M113, turn on my MG, and manage to kill the other 2 squads of riflemen. So this is why I sometimes turn off the MG. Of course, like I said, this is not a very typical scenario, of course. But if you're attacking with multiple infantry squads, especially if you don't have any tanks or something behind, it is worth to, especially if you don't know what is in that forest, it can be worth to, of course not on every squad, but on some squads, just to turn off the MG, just to make it easier. Of course, you can also always micro your infantry instead, you know, but you don't always have the time, you don't always have to micro, especially if there's something going on multiple front lines. But especially against vehicles that have grenade launchers, that can be very important because they have such a high burst damage that if you don't shoot with their anti-tank weapon immediately, your infantry is dead. But of course, if there were 4 squads of riflemen and if the M113s would be spread properly, this also probably would have not ended very well with the Fallschirmjäger 90. But this is, again, this both shows, for one, the importance of 5-pointers, you know. This, you can also micro them properly. If you see that the enemy infantry is not shooting with the MG, don't engage with the M113s, because if the Fallschirmjäger 90 are only shooting with their primary, they're obviously not shooting with their full HE power, you know? You can also counteract, so it's a bit like rock, paper, scissors, right? You see what I think you see what I'm getting here. So, this is the reasoning, and this is why, you know, I turn off the MG sometimes. Again, this is not the exact scenario, but you know, sometimes on some infantry turn off MGs maybe. So, I repeated the point like 20 times by now. I hope this was useful. As always, if you have questions or anything like that, leave them in the comments. I hope you learned something, and I'll hopefully see you next time.